The story begins in an ancient forest, where the sage Shvetashvatara resided. He was a man of great wisdom, known for his deep spiritual insights. His disciples, eager to understand the nature of the universe, came to him seeking answers to the mysteries of existence. One day, as the disciples gathered around the sage, they posed a question that had troubled their hearts. "O revered teacher, we have heard many teachings about creation, the world, and time. We seek to understand how all of this comes into being, how it is sustained, and how it ultimately dissolves. Is there an underlying force, a divine presence, that governs the eternal flow of time?" The sage looked at them with compassion and began his discourse. He chose to explain the cycles of creation, preservation, and destruction through a powerful metaphor, the wheel of time. The symbolic wheel: creation, preservation, and destruction. 1. The beginning, the unmanifest state. In the beginning, the sage began. Before the wheel began to turn, there was only stillness. In this stillness, the universe was unmanifest, hidden in the womb of Brahman, the Supreme Being. Everything that exists, has ever existed, and will exist was contained in that singular, infinite potential. There was no time, no space, only the unchanging presence of Brahman, which is beyond all concepts. He paused, allowing the disciples to grasp the magnitude of this silence, before continuing. From this stillness arose the first turn of the wheel. It represents the unfolding of creation, the moment when the divine will of Brahman set the universe into motion. At this point, the cosmic elements were born. Light and darkness, space and time, earth, water, fire, and air, all these forces emerged from Brahman. They began to move and interact, weaving together the fabric of the universe. 2. The turning, the cycle of preservation. The wheel then began its continuous, relentless turning, the sage said, and as it turned, it represented the phase of preservation, the state in which the universe is sustained and protected. This phase is ruled by Vishnu, the preserver, who ensures that the universe maintains its harmony and balance. Everything within the universe is sustained through the forces of nature and cosmic law, dharma. The movements of the stars, the seasons, the rhythms of life, they all align according to the grand design of Brahman. As the wheel turns, Shvetashvatara continued, every creature, every form, every living being is born, lives, and grows according to its own place in the cosmic order. However, even in this period of preservation, the cycle is never static. The wheel is always turning, always moving, and things within the universe constantly change, evolve, and grow. No being or object is ever truly permanent. It is only preserved for a time, before the cycle moves on to the next phase. 3. The end, destruction and renewal. As the wheel turns on, the sage said, his voice deepening, it inevitably reaches a point where all things must be undone. The forces of destruction, represented by Shiva, take hold. Destruction does not imply annihilation, but rather the cleansing and transformation of the universe. When the time for destruction arrives, everything in the world is drawn back into its source, into Brahman. All forms, all matter, all life, and all time dissolve into the great ocean of the unmanifest. The disciples listened intently as the sage described the end of the cosmic cycle. Even though this destruction may seem fearful or tragic, it is actually an essential part of the cycle. Just as a farmer plows the field and prepares it for a new harvest, the destruction is necessary to clear away the old and make room for the new. Without destruction, there would be no space for the universe to be reborn. The sage smiled and continued. When the time comes for dissolution, the universe enters into a deep sleep, a state of rest. All of creation, preservation, and destruction merge back into Brahman, where time itself ceases to exist. In this state, the universe is unmanifest, waiting in potential to begin again when the wheel turns once more. The endless cycle, samsara and liberation. The turning wheel, then, Shvetashvatara concluded, represents the eternal cycle of samsara, the cycle of birth, life, death, and rebirth that governs all beings. Just as the universe undergoes these phases of creation, preservation, and destruction, every individual soul is caught in this same cycle. Souls are born, live, and die, only to be reborn again in different forms, experiencing the forces of time and change. He paused and turned to his disciples. But there is one who is unaffected by the wheel. Brahman, the supreme reality, remains unchanged. Time and the cosmic cycle may turn endlessly, but Brahman is the eternal witness, beyond the reach of birth and death. Those who realize this truth, who understand that they are not separate from Brahman, but are indeed Brahman itself, are freed from the wheel of time. They attain moksha, liberation, and are no longer subject to the cycles of creation, preservation, and destruction. The final realization. The disciples sat in deep contemplation. The image of the wheel of time had opened their minds to the deeper truth of existence. They realized that while the cycle of the universe continues eternally, there is something beyond time, something that is constant and unchanging. This was the essence of Brahman, the Supreme Self, which is the source of all creation. The sage Shvetashvatara's teachings were clear. Time is cyclical, creation is temporary, and only Brahman is eternal. The wheel of time may keep turning, but those who seek knowledge and union with Brahman can transcend it, realizing their true nature as eternal and beyond the grasp of time. The moral of the story. The eternal cycle. The universe is in a continuous cycle of creation, preservation, and destruction, governed by time, and every being within it is subject to this cycle. The role of Brahman. While time governs the universe, Brahman remains unchanging, eternal, and beyond the cycle of birth and death. The goal of spiritual practice is to realize one's unity with Brahman. The nature of samsara. The wheel of time represents the cycle of samsara, or the cycle of birth, life, death, and rebirth. Souls are caught in this cycle until they attain liberation through realization of their true nature. Transcending time. The ultimate liberation is freedom from the cycle of time, where the soul recognizes its identity with Brahman and attains moksha, or liberation from the perpetual cycle of existence. The wheel of time, as presented in the Shvetashvatara Upanishad, serves as a powerful symbol of the eternal cycles that govern the universe. Through the lens of creation, preservation, and destruction, it illustrates the transient nature of the world and the eternal, unchanging nature of Brahman. Time may turn endlessly, but the realization of Brahman brings freedom from its limitations, guiding the soul toward the ultimate truth and liberation.